So, when people think of the 1920s, three things that come to mind are Flappers, the Great Gatsby novel, and the Great Depression. So, the Great Depression didn't happen because of one big thing. It happened because of several smaller things that wrapped together just broke our economy. And the first was the crash of the stock exchange. So, the stock exchange, what happened there was it was soaring through the 1920s. Through most of the 1920s, it was at an all-time high. Everyone was doing great, but most people paid on margin. What on margin means is that they would pay for a small part of it up front, and then once they sold it, they paid the rest, and then they'd still have money for themselves. But when it crashed in 1929, everybody who paid on margin now owed a large debt because they didn't have the money to pay off the rest that they owed on their stock, which leads us to the second problem, banking. So after the stock exchange crashed, or the stock market crashed, everyone is running around trying to get a loan so that they can pay off their stock. So the bank is lending out copious amounts of money. They are losing all their money because they're lending it out to everybody. And it's not just the stock exchange people, it is also to farmers. And I will get back to them in a second. But the bank has no more money. And so everybody else is scared because the bank is losing their money, so they quickly withdraw everything that they have from the bank. And that causes the entire banking system of our country to almost completely collapse. So by 1930, 4 million Americans, 4 million, were unemployed. And by the following year, it was up to 6 million who were unemployed. And it's not that these people didn't want to work, but it's that they couldn't. There were no jobs available. The economy was wrecked. So the way it works is there has to be more money going in than money going out. And there's no money going in. And all of the banks are closing down because there's no more money. So everybody is starving, everybody is unemployed, no one has food. So with the farmers couldn't afford to harvest their crops anymore because with the banks, they didn't get the same effect as the stock market. So when the stock market was roaring, they didn't really benefit from that. They still went along with their day, and so they relied on the bank to get the loans so that they could afford to do that. But now everybody is starving, and these farmers can't afford to harvest their crops, so there are just crops rotting in a field, and people are starving, and people are unemployed. At this point, there are 15 million people that are starving and unemployed. It's insane. So everybody is livid. Everybody's homeless. And so those who are homeless are making makeshift homes out of garbage and scraps and whatever they can find. And so they have this like little town, and what they call this Hooverville at their president, because President Herbert Hoover believed that the government shouldn't be involved in the people's day-to-day lives like that. So President Hoover believed that the government shouldn't directly put money in the economy. He believed that it wasn't his responsibility to take care of the people, the country. So in 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt won 413 more electoral votes than former President Hoover now. And Roosevelt didn't wait a second. He immediately jumped in and picked up everything and tried to put everything back together the best he can. So within his first 100 days, he already is making new legislation to reform the banks and reform the stock market and put in regulations so that they can't do what they did to break our system. And he created a lot of jobs, and he made it harder to ever break the system. So the Great Depression lasted from 1929 to 1939, and though it was terrible and one of the worst times for our country, it taught us a lot of things. And we also got some great things out of it. Like we got regulation for our banks, we got regulation for the stock, and we also got Social Security. And now we know never to do that again. So we are a lot more knowledgeable now, and I think that we are better off as a country now.